It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly way in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Would you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, could you be mine? Would you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please, please won't you be, please won't you be my neighbor? Hello neighbors, and welcome to our meeting. Thank you for tuning into our December special education meeting. I appreciate all the time and effort everyone has put in to reach students, help with childcare, pack food boxes, and keep the district programs running as smoothly as possible. You may have noticed that I created a new entrance theme for these online meetings. I never really want to start a video and just get into things right away without warming the viewer up. I chose to parody Mr. Rogers because I felt that we need to keep reminding ourselves that we are here to serve the children, and when we serve them, we need to do so with kindness. As I've always done, as we start, I want to remind everybody of the 4 priorities we have for special education. These 4 ideas are the concepts I use to make decisions every day during the pandemic. The agenda is pretty straightforward. I'll do my best to update you on the current COVID trends in Rice County, as well as the summary of the IEC meetings that took place on Tuesday, December 15th. I'll review where we are in regards to learning models and update you on which programs are still open. I want to review the in-person flowchart teams use to determine if they want to bring a student back to school while we are in distance learning. I'll also go over some things to keep in mind about instruction in a virtual environment. I'll discuss things to consider when students are not connecting with us. I'll also talk about the current status of childcare and food service, and I'll have an update on what Animal's been doing since we last saw him. So off we go. As you know, our first priority is the health, safety, and welfare of students and staff. With that in mind, here's what's happening with COVID in Rice County. This slide displays the weekly incidence of COVID-19 in Rice County. These are the actual number of positive tests broken apart by age band. Notice a vast majority of the COVID positive tests occur in the age range from 25 to 60. It's true that there are some positive cases of school-age children, but those are very small, even during the worst parts of the pandemic so far in Rice County. This slide illustrates the mitigation factors we use at school and how they work together to provide some protection for COVID. Currently, there's no factor that's 100% effective. Therefore, we try to put more factors in place to reduce the risk. As you can see, they call this the Swiss cheese model. I think they named it that because they're Packers fans. A lot's happened this past week with COVID-19 in regards to how schools should welcome back students, especially at the elementary grades. On Tuesday, the Incident Command Committee, that's the committee that is made up of school district personnel and decides on what learning model the school district is going to use, met to talk about the possibility of bringing back elementary students as early as January 4th. A day later, the governor announced a new executive order that's going to have an impact on these timelines. Right now, the district would like to bring back students, elementary students especially, into the school buildings next January. Given the governor's order, the earliest we would be able to do this is January 11th, but it's more likely it will have to wait till January 18th. No final date has been determined yet, as the ICC has not met to go through the governor's new orders. As part of the governor's new orders, all school staff will have the option of a COVID-19 test every 2 weeks. The state wants to start a systematic screening of people, whether they're asymptomatic or have symptoms of COVID-19, and feels that one way to do this is to have staff at all buildings, and staff includes custodial staff, paraprofessional staff, teaching staff, at all buildings tested for COVID every 2 weeks, to try and see if there's community spread in the school buildings, and help us determine whether or not we need to quarantine or what areas of the building can stay open. The governor believes that with that new testing, as well as some other mitigation factors, that we should be able to open elementary schools. In addition to the option to have a COVID test every 2 weeks, when working with students now, according to the new governor's order, teachers and paraprofessionals must wear both a face mask and a face shield. Previously, teachers were allowed to decide whether or not they wore a face shield, and many of our early childhood teachers and paraprofessionals wore a face shield only so that students could see their faces. With the new governor's order, that's not going to be possible. Everyone will be required to wear both a face mask and a face shield. Early in November, the Department of Education gave districts permission to keep some in-person classes open, even as the rest of the district moved to a distance learning model. These are our current in-person classrooms, where both teachers and paraprofessionals are working very hard to consistently deliver services to students. According to the flowchart, a student with a disability who has an IEP can be brought in for in-person services if the IEP team determines that the services cannot be met in any other way. The left side of the flowchart shows what a team should do if they determine that the student needs to be seen in person. The right side goes through a series of steps the team should take in order to make that determination. I want to note that on the flowchart, it asks teams to revise the contingency learning plan. At this time, we are not asking teams to revise the contingency learning plans. Do be aware that we can't possibly bring every student in our building at this time, so be very judicious about the students you decide to bring in. These next 8 points are from a presentation given by Jerry O'Connell, the author of Great Instruction, Great Achievement. He's a nationally known speaker and recently spoke to directors at a virtual meeting in November. He lays out 8 ideas to make virtual learning better. The first is to understand that synchronous is better than asynchronous. There are 2 big categories of virtual instruction, the first being synchronous and the second asynchronous. Synchronous means that a teacher and students are online at the same time and interacting. Asynchronous means the opposite. The teacher is not present when the students are online. Instead, there are a variety of activities that students work through on their own. Synchronous is better. Just giving assignments is not effective instruction. If you walked into a physical classroom multiple times and only saw students working through a packet of assignments, you would undoubtedly determine that the teacher was not meeting the needs of the students. That principle also applies to the virtual environment. Merely having students work through a list of assignments, activities, or worksheets on their own is not really providing instruction. That is why synchronous virtual instruction is much better than asynchronous. 3. Do not abandon everything we know about effective instruction. We have decades of experience and research regarding powerful instruction. Even though there might be some disagreement, most educators will want to see a few things in all classes. All students should be actively engaged in the work. We want students to discuss and explain their work to peers. Teachers should provide systematic modeling that involves student input and participation. We want students to have lots of timely and effective feedback. When we transition to a virtual environment, we need to take those elements with us. Even though some say that virtual learning gives us the opportunity to completely rethink the field of education, we should not do so. In education, we too often throw out the baby with the bathwater. We should take what we already know about highly effective and engaging instruction and transition it to a virtual environment, and then get some value added from that environment when possible. All human learning requires two things. All human learning requires two things, practice and feedback. O'Connor refers to this practice as practice turns to mean the same thing. In order to master a skill or a set of skills, human beings must do that skill often, practice, and get information on those attempts, feedback. It does not matter the age of the learner, what the learner is attempting to do, the skillfulness of the learner. He or she can be an expert or a novice with the skills they are attempting. The premise applies to any environment, including brick and mortar or virtual instruction. Follow this sequence. To include the information from the two subheadings above, use this sequence. The teacher models and/or provides a prompt. The teacher can model how to solve a word problem, summarize a text, write an introductory paragraph, solve a chemistry equation, or any other skill. Or he or she can give a prompt so that students can jump in with an initial model. The prompt might be to write the pros and cons of a policy, make a prioritized list, make a prediction about the novel, or any other action that propels them into the day's instructions. Students write. Each student works on their own. This can take just anywhere from 1 to 10 minutes, depending on the task. Their attempt should involve writing in the broadest sense of the word. It can include solving an equation, highlighting a text, developing a visual organizer, summarizing the most important points of a teacher-led discussion, or any other way to document their work on paper or device. Students explain their work. Students should show and explain their work to one or more peers. Students write again. Students update, add to, revise, or expand upon their own work based on feedback and discussion from other students. Teacher debriefs and models. The teacher debriefs the short assignment with the class, seeking input from students, answers questions, and models when appropriate. This circular sequence then continues and should take place several times during a lesson. It should occur in a brick and mortar environment or a virtual environment. Place students in virtual rooms with peers. In a virtual setting, the teachers should pre-assign students into separate rooms during the lesson. He or she starts the sequence with the entire class by modeling or providing a prompt, asks students to write on their own, and then prompts them to share and explain their work in their pre-assigned rooms. They then come together as an entire class for the teacher's debriefing and modeling. Granted, the writing and explaining steps may not apply to the youngest children, but with effective support can easily be applied from 3rd grade through 12th grade. The students should stay in those same rooms during the entire lesson so that students can deepen their discussion with each cycle of the sequence above. Co-teaching should involve small group instruction. In physical co-teaching classrooms, the most powerful approach occurs when each teacher leads an instructional group at the same time. There can also be a maximum of one independent group. If both teachers are not leading groups, then students are not getting much value added from having 2 teachers in the room. Virtual co-teaching classes should also include small group instruction. The same principle applies to virtual co-teaching classes. A simple way to do that is for a class to be split into 2 groups or rooms, where each group includes both students with and without disabilities. Each teacher can teach the same lesson to their respective group, including the sequence above, with their half of the class in subrooms. By splitting the class in half, there's a much lower student-to-teacher ratio. For now, I would not include an independent group. All students should be in one of the two teacher-led groups, and when to document our attempts to see them. Even through COVID, MDE and the Federal Office of Special Education Services has consistently said that schools are required to offer a free and appropriate public education. In regards to documenting, if a student is attending your online meetings and responding to your assignments, you do not need to document anything additional, unless it's for third-party billing reasons. We would consider this normal special education services that are documented in the IEP. If you cannot connect with a student, please document your attempts to connect with them. Try calling at different times of the day, try a different mode of communication, try communicating with their parents, and if all else fails, try calling an IEP meeting. If the school needs to drop them because they have not connected with anyone for 15 consecutive days, try holding an IEP meeting before sending a stand ready to serve letter. Instructions for what to do with the 15-day drop are on the Special Education Resource website, or you can request them from Carrie. Our child care groups have remained the same since we've started distance learning before Thanksgiving. Currently, Group 5 is attending to child care. After the winter break, Group 6 will be attending to child care. Our food service groups have also remained the same. Currently, Group 8 is working food service this before winter break, and Group 1 will be working when we get back from the holidays. We also have a para subgroup. The para subgroups have been, because of the amount of absences we've had, the para subgroups have been called in to work some consistent hours, at least one day or 1 or 2 shifts during their time on the sublist. Currently, there's a huge need for people to help with childcare. So if you can fit a childcare shift into your schedule, they'd be glad to have you. Please contact Tiffany Reavers. If you do need a sub, notify Tiffany and Rob through email as soon as you know that you need a sub. I want to go over some reminders because some people don't think that I've been very clear on what the expectations are in regards to people working their contracted hours. Staff are paid to be working their contracted hours even if they're working from home. When one works from home, they are still expected to work their contracted hours. If you are assigned to food service and/or childcare for a 3-hour shift, you are still expected to work your remaining contracted hours. Many of you have asked what Animal has been doing since the pandemic started. I reached out to him asking if he would join us and tell you a little bit about what he's been doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob, for that warm welcome.
Animal, we're glad to have you with us. Can you tell us what you've been up to?
No problem. Me decide to travel and visit special places.
Where are you now?
Me at the President's Hall of Fame. It is south of the Dakotas.
President's Hall of Fame?
Yes, this where all big shot presidents get frozen in stone.
Really? What presidents did you see there?
Me see very first President Georgie.
Georgie? What's he famous for?
Georgie make very good pie.
Cherry pie?
Yes, Rob. His pie is fresh from tree he chopped down.
Okay. Who else is at the President's Hall of Fame?
Tommy is here. Tommy likes real estate. He buy New Orleans.
Do you mean the Louisiana Purchase?
Yes, Rob. That what me say.
Who's next?
Teddy. Teddy is inventor of teddy bears.
Okay, well that may be mostly correct.
Yes. And Teddy also Fuzzy's great-granddad.
Well, why do you think that?
They both have same last name. Bear.
Who is the last president?
He is Beardy.
I don't think that's his name.
It do not matter. He made of stone now. He don't care.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to go. Say goodbye, animal.
Goodbye, animal.
It's such a good feeling to know you're alive. It's such a happy feeling. You're growing inside, and when you wake up, ready to say, I think I'll make a snappy new day. It's such a good feeling, a very good feeling, the feeling you know that we're friends.